Here at You Feel That, the podcast, we're going to learn different processes to help us be able to navigate different circumstances. And we all know there's so many circumstances in life: entrepreneurship, creativity. There's a whole bunch of different occupations, fatherhood, motherhood. There's a whole bunch of different opportunities to build process. So that's what we're here to do. Hey, you feel that? You are now tuned into You Feel That with Bryce the Third. Yo, and welcome back to You Feel That with Bryce the Third, the premier podcast for those looking to learn how to grow, excel, and succeed in the world as a highly sensitive person, whatever that looks like. And today we talking about them feels. Yeah, that's right, them tough-ass emotions, some of those foundational requirements of being a highly sensitive person. What is a highly sensitive person, you ask? Well, let's inquire to Wikipedia. So the Wikipedia definition of a highly sensitive person: a human with a particularly high measure of SPS is considered to have hypersensitivity or be a highly sensitive person. So SPS is sensory processing sensitivity. It's a temperamental or personality trait involving an increased sensitivity of the central nervous system and a deeper cognitive processing of physical, social, and emotional stimuli. So a highly sensitive person is someone that has SPS. And the term SPS and HSP were coined in the mid-1990s by psychologist Elaine Aron and her husband, author Aron, who developed the highly sensitive person scale. So basically what I'm seeing from this is increased emotional reactivity and empathy, greater depth of information processing, greater awareness of environmental subtleties, greater ease of overstimulation. And here goes a GIF that has some signs you might be a HSP. You have been called oversensitive. You are easily overwhelmed by your senses. You are easily upset by violence in media. You avoid stressful situations. You are overwhelmed by crowds. You identify as deeply emotional. You were called shy as a child. You are overwhelmed by tasks. You are attuned to nuances. You are sensitive to pain. You are considered thoughtful. You work hard to please others. And obviously from reading these things, not all of these things are going to apply to a HSP, right? And I don't feel like all of these apply to me. And there are some that have applied to me, like being overwhelmed by crowds, that I've had to work to reframe. I had to work to make some of these things beneficial to me, to turn them on their head and use some of these sensitivities to benefit me in my favor. It's kind of like learning how to do karate or learning how to do judo or whatever other martial art. You learn how to take some of these things that you can sense are super sensitive within yourself and learn to use it to be a benefit to you. Or like, you know how, like, I forget what martial arts it is where you'll use the momentum. I think is it Jiu Jitsu, where you use the momentum of the force that comes your way and turn it against itself. And being overwhelmed by crowds was one of those things that I've experienced. Anxiety, I've experienced, and I've had to learn how to reframe anxiety as excitement. Because if we think about anxiety and excitement, the same things that your body feels from anxiety is the same things that your body experiences, like physically, from excitement. So I've had to learn how to reframe. Instead of, oh, I'm anxious, I've had to look at it like, oh, I'm excited. And in that reframing, those indications that let me know that I'm anxious, those physical indications like dry mouth, butterflies in my stomach, hairs on the back of my head standing up, that I would normally affiliate with being anxious, I've had to reframe it and turn it into something that benefits me, which is, okay, now that's an indication. This is the catalyst towards my excitement. And as you can see, this is the type of talk we're going to talk today on this episode. Learning how to take our tough-ass emotions, our feels, and use them in a way that benefit us. Or learning how to cope and deal with the things that it is that we experience in a way that allows for us to be functional in a world that we live in a world full of overstimuli, in a world full of opportunities to be overwhelmed and to be overtaken by the ways that we feel the world. So I want to start this episode with a little bit of qualification, as we would call it at the 12-step tables, where I let you know what it is that qualifies me to be highly sensitive and my specific journey with anger, loneliness, fear, etc. And this is going to be a super Cliff Notes version. Maybe we'll continue to get deeper into some of my background as the podcast continues to carry on, especially in these episodes where I don't have somebody to interview. And I just find it like mad important to be able to share my personal experience in a way that qualifies me to be able to share with you some of the process that I've used in my own life. Because who wants to listen to somebody who hasn't been through the things, who wants to take suggestions from somebody who hasn't been through the things that it is that they've been through? That's just somebody coming looking to capitalize upon a community. Me, I'm a part of the community. That's the whole point that I've even been brought to this point of starting this fucking podcast, is because I'm sensitive as fuck. And I've had to learn how to really deal with my sensitivity in a way that benefits me versus a way that debilitates me. Because if I just allow it to be what it is, it's debilitating. But if I learn to turn it on its head and use it in a way that benefits me, then I can be the high performing individual that I desire to be. And so, that's why I'm here. So I kind of wanted to take this opportunity to share some experiences with you and qualify myself. So I've been tasered. I've been in fights. I've had a lot of anger issues. I've always dealt with loneliness and sadness, and specifically loneliness. And I know that we'll delve into more of that in different episodes of the podcast. And I think I've probably, depending on what episodes you've already seen, I've already delved into the loneliness, but we'll continue to delve into that because that's one of the specific things that I've dealt with in life is loneliness. But yeah, like I've been tasered by, the police, and not in a way where it was like, oh, this is unjust. Like I really deserved it. Like they told me to leave. They told me to go. And, they showed up because it was between me and the store owner, and the store owner was, he was being a punk. But at the end of the day, like I don't got no control over how another person acts. And I showed up and I was a punk times two. Like the police was there and I'm still trying to get at the guy. He's a store owner, it was just bad. It was just bad. And they tasered me, and I had to have that experience. That experience was necessary. One, because I didn't die. And because I didn't die, I learned the lesson that experience allows me to learn moving forward. And let me share another experience with you that specific experience prepared me for. So I'm from Inkster, Michigan, and I was on my way moving out the hood. And maybe a month or two before we was moving out, I was hooping with my guy. I used to work at a plant, and we used to work real late. And so we got off of work and we went to go hoop. So it's 2, 3, 4 in the morning, and I'm coming home to the crib. I come home to the crib, I pull in the driveway, a policeman pull up behind me. So I'm not about to, and I promise you this was the last time that I pulled in a driveway car first. Now I always flip around because you never know who's gonna pull up behind you. Is that PTSD? Is that something is that trauma that needs to be healed? Do we need to have a session? I don't know. But so pulled in the driveway. It's my crib. My daughter was young. I was still with their mom at that point, and they're in the house asleep. I'm sitting in the driveway facing the house with this big spotlight that this policeman just came up and shined on me. So we sitting there for a good 5-6 minutes, and eventually he gets on the megaphone. I forgot the instructions that he even asked me, but these old confusing ass police instructions: put your hands up, but open the door, but get on the floor, but stay in the car, just some shit like that. And eventually what he ended up doing was he came and grabbed me and threw me on the ground, gun to the back of my head in my own driveway. I live here. I know I'm innocent. I know I have no reason for this person to kind of pull up and put a gun to the back of my head at my own crib. But at this point, now, if Taser Bryce had popped out, it would have been, oh, I'm so hey, no, you wrong. You got to understand how wrong you is. You got the wrong guy. And I'm wiggling all type of stuff like that. And we all know, especially in circumstance like that where emotions are high, gun to the back of my head, it's over with. It's over with. So in that circumstance, I was able to, okay, officer, you got it. It's okay. All right, we'll figure this out. You know, I stood still, the gun in the back of my head, knee to the back of my neck. It hurt. I'm not on some, oh, this hurts, get off me, I don't deserve this. This is injustice. Now is not the time. Now is not the time for that. Now is the time to preserve your life because your daughter is inside sleep. Now is the time to preserve your life because you need to be here for another day. So so when I got tasered, that allowed me to learn my lesson in a way that showed me, oh, this is what your uncontrollable anger gets you. So when I was put in this circumstance, in this position where I'm in the right, like I'm completely in the right. I'm justified. I'm justified if I start wiggling around and telling this cop about himself and how wrong he is. But does that really serve me in this moment? So that's how understanding our emotions and developing a new relationship with our emotions allows for us to succeed and excel in life and maybe even save our own lives. And in that circumstance, it saved my life. So this is where I come from. Like, this is the level of intensity that my emotions come from. Like, I come from all that. Like, I come from, guns and fights and drama and substance abuse and toxic relationships and unfair unloading off onto other people the feelings that I was feeling and I was going through. And because of that, I think it has equipped me to be able to build process that does the opposite, where it's like, okay, I am aware that my emotions are mine. These don't belong to anybody else. So I need to figure out a process to make sure that this doesn't spill onto anybody else unfairly, because nobody else deserves these heavy emotions on them. I need to figure out how to process these emotions. I need to figure out how to use these emotions to better myself. I need to understand why it is that I feel these things the way that I feel, even though I look around and I see like it doesn't really seem like nobody else is feeling things as deeply as this. So I need to figure out, this is my personal lesson. This is my personal dharma. This is my personal journey to figure these things out. So that's kind of what qualifies me to sit here and kind of be talking to you about what it is that I've experienced and kind of what it is that I've used to help myself, the tools that I've used to be able to propel me in the desired direction of being emotionally fit, emotionally healthy, perpetually growing, perpetually looking to be healthier in my relationships, in my life circumstances, like when it comes to, finances and being a parent and creating things, being creative and being productive. And another thing before we move into the next section is just, it wasn't always this way. I didn't always seek tools. I've spoken before on the podcast about how I consider myself to be in recovery from substance abuse and alcoholism. I identify as a person in recovery. And that's because I used to use substances, things outside of myself, as a tool to numb up the ways that I felt. I would use relationships. I would use alcohol. I would use drugs as a way to kind of put a Band-Aid on top of what it is that I felt, because I didn't want to feel that at that moment. And what ended up happening was I would come out of the circumstance. I would come out of like being high. I would come out of being blow, like it would wear off. And the next day, the emotion would still be there, but I didn't do anything substantial to like learn how to process it. So say I'm sad and then I drink that night because I'm sad. It may numb it up for a minute and may allow me to get out of my feels. But the next day, the sadness is still there. The drink is worn off, but what the emotion was there, and I had the ability to like go through the emotion and learn the lesson that the emotion was there to teach me. I didn't learn that because I numbed up. I got drunk that night. So learning how not to numb up has been a process. Learning how to implement process that allows for me to learn a lesson that maybe sadness may come and tell me. Maybe loneliness may come and tell me. Maybe anger may be there to tell me. Like there's lessons in these things. Okay, so say I stubbed my toe. I'm angry about it, like, and I'm mad. Like I can pick up the bed and throw it out the window and, blame everybody in the house for not warning me that the bed had the edge right there and I stubbed my toe. Or I could take that pain and use that as an opportunity to like, oh, I need to watch when I'm bending this corner like this because this bedpost is right here and this boy is lethal as fuck. You know, just the same as if I put my hand on the stove and I get burned, it gives me pain. And when it gives me the pain, it lets me know, like, I don't want to do that again because that shit hurts. I just burnt my fucking hand off, right? But imagine if we didn't feel the pain of burning our hands on the stove. We wouldn't have any indication that we shouldn't touch the stove again. So our hands would just burn off, right? So the pain lets us know there is something to be altered in the circumstance. So the process is, how can I put my antenna to learn and be very sensitive towards the alterations that I can make that would improve my life so that I don't have to experience this pain, because there's always going to be pain, but this specific pain I don't have to experience anymore, you know, and that goes into like relationships. I don't want to be in this type of relationship anymore. This isn't something that helps for my creative expression. It doesn't help for my intimate expression. It doesn't add for these things, but I continue to hop from this type of relationship to this type of relationship. It's the same relationship, just a different person. You know, the same thing like if I don't like somebody that I work with at a job, and I, instead of working through what it is I don't like about this person, I quit the job. The next job I go to, guaranteed, is going to be at least one person that's exactly like the person that was at the other job that I left because of that person, you know, because it's not about the person. It's about the feelings that I feel. So here at You Feel That, the podcast, we're going to learn different processes to help us be able to navigate different circumstances. And we all know there's so many circumstances in life: entrepreneurship, creativity. There's a whole bunch of different occupations, fatherhood, motherhood. There's a whole bunch of different opportunities to build process. So that's what we're here to do. And that's what qualifies me. Okay, so now that I've qualified myself, and you see that I'm a HSE, not a HSP. That's a highly sensitive expert, motherfucker. Nah. But now that we've qualified ourselves and we're here and we're amongst friends, let's get into how to develop new ways to handle these tough emotions, these feels. So these are tools that I've used in my own life that have allowed me to excel and exceed and not be debilitated by my emotions that I feel, but use my emotions in a way that are beneficial and move me forward and cultivate growth. So, number 1, seek counseling. Y'all like, oh man, here we go with this shrink shit. But no, like having an unbiased person that doesn't know you, doesn't know your circumstance, isn't your mom, isn't your dad, isn't your girlfriend, isn't your brother, isn't your cousin, that can sit down with you and has been trained in a way that allows for them to kind of help give you different processes to use to get through life and the hardships within life and the emotional hardships that you may feel is immensely beneficial. I have a counselor. I've had a couple of counselors in my life. I've had a few counselors. And this is the thing about counseling. I know a lot of people will go and they'll go to one counselor and they'll be like, that shit didn't work for me. And it kind of makes me sad, because it's just like a friendship. It's just like a partnership. Not all friendships and not all partnerships are gonna just blossom off of one meeting. So it's like there's a process in learning what it is that you appreciate in a counselor. And sometimes it's gonna take 1 or 2 or 3 different people that you run into to be able to figure out, okay, yeah, I like this about this person. I don't like the fact that they don't ask me any questions. I don't like the fact that they talk about, you know, their kids and their family all day and say that I've got it figured out. This is a true life story. This was one of my first counselors that I had. Everybody's doing the best they can with what they've been given, but like fresh out of rehab, when I got out of rehab, they gave me a substance abuse counselor, and I think like she was more focused on people that were really focused on like, I just don't want to get high. And I really wasn't on that wave. Like I was on like, these fucking feels, how do I deal with them? And I was rapidly building process from the jump. So, you know, she would always say, it sounds to me like you've got it figured out. And then we would get to talking about her fucking family. And it's like, about a 4th session, I'm like, I don't need this shit no more. And at that point, I could have been like, counseling doesn't work for me. But like, I really appreciated the freshness and newness of the process of talking to somebody that didn't have a biased opinion, somebody who didn't know me, who didn't have a viewpoint because they had skin in the game of my life. And I eventually I found like different counseling. I've had a counselor that I did couples counseling with before me and my ex split. But we did counseling by ourselves at first, and then we brought her in, and then we had sat down, and both of those were very impactful. They helped me to like work through some things that I kind of like that had the potential to traumatize me and fuck me up. And then like I really felt like I gave as much of a shot at making the relationship work as I could, like with that person. And he was very like goal oriented too. Like every fucking session, he was like, "So did we accomplish what we came to accomplish? Do you think we can close it out? Do we accomplish it?" Like he was very like goal oriented. So everybody has their own style. My counselor now, he like my dog really. Like, I go over there for bonfires and we kick it, and he just happens to build for me. So it's just being open towards different counseling relationships and seeking it, and not being scared to look for it, because I know sometimes money could be an issue, especially where I come from, right? So there are plenty of opportunities to connect with somebody with a sliding scale, or somebody that takes Medicaid and will help you apply for Medicaid or Medicare or whatever the fuck that is. There are a lot of opportunities for you to be able to find a counselor. And maybe as this podcast continues, I'll continue to be a resource broker for things like that, because I find that that's real important for us to have in the community. So seek counseling. All right, number 2 tool for developing new ways to handle tough emotions. Community. Ain't nothing like going through something and then coming across somebody that's going through the same exact thing, but is a little bit further along than you, or somebody that has experienced something very similar to you, and you can talk to them and really like be on the same wavelength about some of the shit that you've experienced. Really, that's the biggest reason why I started this podcast. Like, I've done a couple of other podcasts in the past, but I really feel that this one has the ability to reach more people, because I am super passionate about building community around being super sensitive, especially like where I'm from. Like, that's not even something we really talk about. Like, and if we're sensitive, we don't embrace that shit. Like, we push that shit to the side. Like, that is a weakness where I'm from, and I'm living in truth. Like, this is not a weakness. As a matter of fact, it's a fucking superpower. It's a fucking superpower. I feel like Kanye when he's on that. You see, it's a superpower. You know what I'm talking about if you're a Kanye fan. But I really feel like being highly sensitive is a superpower. So when you have community, you have a group of people that understand what it is that you've gone through at the experiential level, not at I've seen it on TV, or I've heard about it, or I've read about it, but at like, you are a peer. And thus is the importance of, different programs like 12-step program, Alcoholics Anonymous, Gamblers Anonymous, Overeaters Anonymous, Recovering Couples Anonymous, Recovery Dharma, all the anonymouses. There just is something crazy about going somewhere like it. And I've told the story of my first AA meeting, where it's like, I showed up and these people were fucking laughing, and then it was like, okay, cool, they didn't drink the sauce. But then you'll see them say their sobriety time, and it's like, oh damn, like, you ain't had a drink of alcohol in 3-4 years, and you laughing, you happy like that? Damn, I want what you got, And even though like I showed up to AA, and like really a lot of my drugs of choices was pills, but it wasn't necessarily about like the drug of choice. It was about the fact that we both use something externally to numb this spiritual deficiency on the inside of us, and just to be able to kind of get around people that are trying to live, or who are already living how it is that I'm trying to live, it's invaluable. And this goes for, this, and we'll talk about this definitely more as the podcast goes along, but this goes for everything I've ever wanted to do. If I've ever wanted to level up in life, like if I found community, it took me there. Community is like the elevator. Community. So So by yourself, it's like taking the fucking stairs. And the stairs go up and then curve back down. You never go anywhere because you're just you. There's only so much you could work with. Whereas like community is like taking the elevator, because not only are you being supported, but you have the information and knowledge and wealth of other people that have already experienced 3 or 4 years of the life that you're looking to lead. So you can grow exponentially in understanding, and maybe even, so say it's about like finances, and that's where I'm at right now, where I'm tapped into a couple of masterminds where it's like I'm learning how to be creative. I'm learning how to be creative around finance. I'm learning how to create abundance. I'm coming from poverty mindset. I'm coming from where we don't have shit to I'm going to, I'm gonna be a millionaire. I am a millionaire, and I'm gonna have my fucking Tesla Model X. And I wanted to say, I knew I was gonna say it on this podcast eventually, because I'm gonna leave it right here. So when I pull up in that Model X, y'all get to celebrate with me. But I know where I'm going, but I have to get around people who are there already. I have to get around people who $10,000 is broke to them. They've raised their broke to a level of like, for me right now, if I had 10 bands, like I'd be pretty happy. And 10 bands is on the way, right? And that's going to be broke to me because I'm around people who is broke too, right? So getting around, having community is, when it comes to tough ass emotions, having those people in your phone that you can call, like, look, I'm going through this. And so say in the context of Alcoholics Anonymous, it's like I might be a black dude, a black 21-year-old dude from the east side of Detroit, and you might be a white 45-year-old guy from Royal Oak. And you might not know nothing about what it is that I'm going through when I call you, but you do know what it's like to go through life being someone who used to use alcohol in a way to numb up these tough ass emotions. So when I call you, we have that commonality in mind, even if we don't have nothing else in common. And that's the important thing about community. So seek community, find it. I know I mentioned on another podcast, so when I quit cigarettes, that's what I had. Like I had a Facebook group to be able to quit. And the Facebook group was super trash. Now I think I deleted it or I jumped out of it. But then when I was in it, I wouldn't have been able to quit smoking cigarettes without that, because everybody around me was smoking. Like everybody around me was smoking. My mom was smoking. I go to the AA meetings. Of course, they were smoking. Like everybody was smoking. So to have community sets us way ahead of the curve of being better at learning how to manage our tough emotions. The number 3 tool for dealing with them tough ass emotions: mindfulness is a practice. This has saved my life. I am actually a mindfulness instructor now, and who let me be a mindfulness instructor? At the end of the day, though, I just share what's worked for me, just like we do with this podcast. I just share my practice, and it's been a beautiful thing. But learning how to be mindful is something that allows for us to reestablish our relationship with our minds, or maybe even establish for the first time a conscious relationship with our minds and emotions. If we don't have the ability to look at and stop and pause between feeling and doing, we are a slave to our emotions. And mindfulness helps kind of break the chains and free us from that slavery. And there's practices. So I have a list here: 6 steps to mindfully deal with difficult emotions. I got it from the Gottman Institute. And we'll go down the list and kind of just talk about it. So 1 is turn towards your emotions with acceptance. Become aware of the emotion and identify where you sense it in your body. And that was big for me, especially working with my latest counselor. It was big for me in my breakup. It was a long-term relationship breakup, like 3 years ago. And it was very hard. It was very hard. It was a relationship I had been in since I was a teenager. And actually the mother of my kids, and it was just one of those ones where it was like it was tough. It was tough, right? Yeah. So, but we worked and helped like identify like where the emotion was. So like even down to like, oh, like what's the color of it? And for me, it was dark purple. I remember that motherfucker. Like it was my cousin. Like I remember his face. Like if somebody came through and asked me like who murdered, like I would be able to sketch this motherfucker out. But it was like dark purple, and it would feel like like I swallowed a hot ball of iron, like in my esophagus and in my chest and in my belly. Like it was this terrible emotion that I didn't want, and I wanted to like push it away. It was almost like acid reflux. Like I really just felt like terrible. But like seeing it, identifying it, seeing its color, seeing what it looks like allowed for me to kind of find where it is. And then once I found where it was, I could work with it. And then working with it is, working through the emotions. It's a tool now. So now I can work with it, right? So identify and label the emotion is number 2. To stay mindful, say to yourself, this is anger or this is anxiety. So that's kind of one of those things where it's like emotions can sweep you like all of a sudden, like I'm like, oh damn, like I'm mad and sad at the same time. And there's some emotions that I haven't been like, so and that's the whole thing with emotions. It's not like black or white like I used to think it was, like happy and sad. Like now there's such a spectrum, right? But I've become somewhat of a professional in identifying where on the spectrum that it may lie or what combination of emotions it is because of the practice of showing up for each emotion and learning how to like, okay, this is anger. I'm angry right now. Okay, this is sadness. I'm sad right now. Okay, this is loneliness. I'm lonely right now. And then learning like what to do with these emotions once I've identified them. So if, going back to the color, like when this came and it was dark purple and it felt like I swallowed a hot ball of cold, like that's what the feeling was. And then I was able to kind of like identify like, oh, this feels like abandonment. Like this feels like loneliness. This feels like sadness. Like this feels like frustration. This feels like I'm alone, and then I was able to kind of work with it because now I've identified it. Number 3, accept your emotions. Don't deny the emotion, acknowledge and accept that it is there. So that's big because when we try to push things away, it doesn't go away. And as a matter of fact, what I've learned is that if I'm working to actively push it away, like that's a whole nother emotion too. So like the emotion of non-acceptance, if that's a word, is a whole emotion on top of whatever emotion it is I'm trying to not accept and push away. So if I'm angry and I'm also like, nah, fuck it, we can't be angry right now. Right now is not the time to be angry. Like that's another emotion on top of the anger. That's me not accepting the anger on top of the anger. And that's another emotion that I have to deal with. So accepting your emotions, not denying them, acknowledging them and accepting that they're there is big in the process of like processing them, right? Number 4, realize the impermanence of your emotions. Even if the emotion feels overwhelming, remember that it will pass. And this is something that when working with others, I'm learning how to communicate in a way that has compassion and understanding embedded in it, because nobody wants to hear that, oh, it's not going to last forever. Nothing lasts forever. When you're going through it, it doesn't fucking feel like it. When you're going through it, it feels like it's going to be for infinity and for eternity, right? So I'm learning when working with others, like how to kind of slide this in there in a way that it resonates with the soul and allows for people to like really sit in it and allow for it, because it won't last forever. But I think for me specifically, like I've had to have some of those experiences of it not I had to have the experience of it not lasting forever and not doing what it is that I used to do. So a big thing like for people that deal with substance abuse and alcoholism is like getting through the emotion without picking up. And that's big, because once you get through the emotion and then it rises and falls and I didn't have to pick up, it's like, damn. Like, so I thought I had to numb up, but I don't have to numb up, because eventually I'll work through it. And as a matter of fact, when I get on the other side, there's a lesson here that lets me know what this thing showed up for in the first place. So this is very interesting. And once you've done it once, you could do it again. And if you do it again, you could do it with the confidence that is built in from the last time you did it. So it's just a beautiful process of like realizing that, these things aren't impermanent, but like cultivating the wisdom around this, because without wisdom, like these is just fucking words. There's this book that I'm going to recommend in a little bit called Food for the Heart by Ajahn Chah, and it's a big ass book, but one of the most important things in that book that was said is the wise must know for themselves. And the only way for me to become wise is for me to have a bit of experience. But hopefully, I'm really hoping that like having tools, having resources like this podcast will allow for you to kind of like co-opt my experience, co-opt some of my wisdom. And when I say that it's not going to last forever, whatever it is, I promise you it won't. I promise you it won't. I promise you it doesn't last forever. So hang in there and keep pushing. Number 5, inquire and investigate. Ask yourself, what triggered me? Why do I feel this way? And that's big, because now we're doing the investigation. We can learn and cultivate the wisdom for next time when this happens, we're prepared for it. So this time we may have been blindsided because we've never felt this emotion before. We've never been in this circumstance before. When I was in that breakup, I never really had no breakup because I never really had no relationship like that before. So like experiencing that feeling, it was a newbie, and I was a newbie, and it was a doozy. And it's like, damn, I had never felt this shit before. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, like going through, turning toward my emotions, accepting them, identifying and labeling the emotion, accepting the emotions, realizing the impermanence of my emotion. And now the inquiry and the investigation allows me to see, like, how did we fucking get here? How did we get here? And how can we prevent getting here again? How can we set up a process that allows healthily for me to prevent getting to the point of misunderstanding where there's unnecessary pain? We won't be able to stop all of the pain. Pain is necessary. Like I told you, if my hand didn't burn when I put it on the stove, like my hand will fall off every time I did something dangerous with my hand. Pain is necessary. I appreciate pain. But there's some pain that is unnecessary, as I'm pretty sure you all know, where we put ourselves in the same circumstance over and over. And it's like, damn, like I knew that. Like I knew that. But we didn't know that because we didn't do that investigation or that inquiry the last time we experienced it as to why we felt the ways that we felt. And number 6, let go of the need to control your emotions. Be open to the outcome of your emotions and what unfolds. And that's really like compassion. And we can't give something that we don't possess, but like we definitely have to, it definitely has to start with us. We have to have compassion for ourselves and for this process. And it's just like one of those ones where it's like, if I don't want to feel it and I'm trying to push it away, once again, that's an emotion on top of the emotion that I don't want. But also on the flip side, and this is just some wisdom that I've been able to cultivate through experience, like when things are great and wonderful and feel good, like, oh, I feel like I'm in love, or I feel like this is perfect and I never wanted to stop. I never wanted to go away. It prevents me from like being in this moment because I'm scared that it's going to leave. It's not going to last forever. So let me hold on to it. So hugging on to the pain, or like pushing away the pain and hugging on to the pleasure, are both one and the same. Like learning to not have to hold on to our emotions and learning that our emotions are impermanent and being open to the outcome of what the emotions are and whatever unfolds from there. The 4th tool for dealing with tough ass emotions is seeking out info on the topic. And this is going to be short because that's what I did for this podcast episode. I just really Googled all this shit. Like some of these things are things that I've used in my own life and I've applied to my own life. But really in all actuality, like if I'm looking for info on something or I'm going through something, like Google is a Google away. Like Google search like how to deal with anxiety. Google search how to deal with depression. Google search how to deal with suicidal thoughts. Like Google search how to deal with these things and see what pops up. Also, reading. Reading is essential and it has helped me immensely. I don't necessarily always recommend reading as, because a lot of people, they'll recommend like reading in books like it's the fucking book. You can get the same shit from a YouTube video that you can from a book. The only reason I prefer to read because books are old. YouTube is kind of old, but it's not that old, right? But books are old. I've learned things from people that have died 30 years before I was born and have changed my life. So the wisdom that has been able to be documented in volumes of books is very, very good for me. It's very good for me. And one book I will recommend, especially for the topic of this episode, is Food for the Heart by Ajahn Chah. Food for the Heart by Ajahn Chah. This was the book that changed my inner workings and helped me to achieve the cessation of suffering when I was going through it in a very tough and transitional point in my life. So Food for the Heart by Ajahn Chah. I recommend that to anybody who, when I see similar things in their experience where it's like, this fucking sucks, I recommend that book to them. So go pick that up. Tool number 5, and this is the first before last tool that we have, is finding a creative outlet. How could Bryce the Third, if you ain't never been to my show, like that's a thing on my shows, but how could Bryce the Third not have music and creative expression as a way that has helped me deal with my tough ass emotions? And as a matter of fact, they help me create things that may help others deal with their tough ass emotions. Because if you think about it, this podcast is creative expression for me. Like this is a platform that I built for myself, so I could be able to sit here and talk to you all about my personal experience. So talking about this and getting it on the floor and reflecting on my experiences is cathartic as fuck for me. Like it's this helps me to sit here and help you. So whether and creative expression doesn't necessarily have to be something that you have to make a business of and you have to help others. Just like shit, if you sit down and fucking finger paint, or if you get a coloring book, or if you get a pen on a piece of pad and just scribble, or if you got your iPad and you open it up and you scribble, or you got a app that you like to write just poetry on, or you just like to write shit that rhyme and don't even want to call it poetry, or you just journal, or just like creative expression, like getting it out, finding an outlet that speaks to you. And the only way you're going to find that is if you actually participate in the action of like doing something, right? And then even on top of that, like activity, like physical activity. So we'll just tie these last two in. I said this was the first before last, but this is both the last. So this 5 and 6, which is like physical activity, where it's like some people dance. Like some people, I fucking dance. Like I wasn't necessarily always a dancer because like I felt like I looked goofy. I felt like, I don't have, but then when I got into it, it's like, I don't give a fuck if I look goofy. I feel good. This is cathartic. Like sometimes I got to dance this shit away. Like I'm creating platforms. I might create a movie, a dance battle movie for real. Like, and it'll be like Bryce versus the dance. I don't fucking know. Like, I like to dance. Like, I like to dance. Singing, working out, going for a walk, fucking crying. So this is the thing. We're going to end on this. Like, crying is cathartic. Don't hold them tears in. Get them shits out. Let them out. Let them out. Let them out, black man. Let them out, man. Let them out. Like, let them out. We are discouraged from crying. And that has been what I have been in the corner bawling my fucking eyes out. Like I have crawled on the floor from the living room like I'm at war in the foxhole to my bedroom, just like I had to get it out. And afterwards, I could reflect on it. And even the physical action of getting it out is expression. Like it gets it out. It gets it out. So those are definitely things. Creative outlets and, physical exertion, working out, whatever, riding a bike, taking a walk. Like these are all different ways that we can use these things for help with these tough emotions that may come in. Last but not least, before we get out of here, I want to detail some of the benefits that we get from applying these tools to our lives emotionally, right? Because at the end of the day, like we don't want to do anything unless there is motivation to do it. So what is the benefit of using these tools, going above and beyond to learn how to use our emotions in a way that benefits us? What are the benefits, right? So number 1, an increased quality of life. Now that's it. I could just end the podcast right there. Like we were all like an increased quality of life. Like, wouldn't you like to be at peace? Like, wouldn't you like to be at peace with yourself and with the circumstances at hand? Wouldn't you like to know that you have the capability to show up in life no matter what life presents to you? Wouldn't you like to be able to depend on yourself? And that's the thing too. That's the thing that's a big benefit that I found is like being able to depend on me. Because where I come from is using people, places, and things being there externally for me as a sense of security. And what I've learned is that with all things being impermanent, people gonna leave. Places are not gonna be the same as they were when they used to be that way. Things don't last. They get old and they break. So to be able to be dependent on myself, no matter what it is that life presents to me to be, is very comforting. It's a very comforting understanding. And there's this thing called refuge. It's almost like I can take refuge in this process, knowing that no matter what it is that life presents to me, I can show up and I can be at my best. If I'm angry, if I'm mad, if I'm sad, if I'm anxious, if I'm lonely, like I have a process to be able to dig into, even if nobody is there, even if the house is burning down, even if the things that I used to have aren't there anymore. And that's worth more than money. because especially as an entrepreneur or a creative, like in a field where things are always topsy-turvy and not necessarily guaranteed to be the way that they were beforehand, and that's the people, places, and things in it, this practice comes in super handy and allows for us to step into life and accept life for what it is at all times. So number 2, better relationship with yourself, and in turn, better relationship with others. You also learned to attract healthier relationships energetically, right? So whatever it is that you want, the cosmic mirror, right? We have to learn to be that. So if we find that we're attracting these relationships that are toxic, that aren't self-aware, that aren't worth what it is that we feel that we're worth, then we need to start doing that work ourselves, because we're going to be a magnet for what we are. And if we're attracting these toxic relationships, these people who lie, people who cheat, people who steal, and this is the people that we attract, then maybe looking in the mirror can do us some good, because it'll show us like, oh, well, maybe I need to kind of switch up my habitual patterns. Maybe I need to kind of look at how I deal with my emotions. Why am I attracting so many people that are so fucking angry all the time? Like, is my anger bleeding out onto other people? Like, why did this person lie? Like, I don't lie, do I? You know, like learning how to look at ourselves and see ourselves as that thing that attracts what it is that we bring to us allows for us to develop a process within ourselves that's reflective of what it is that we want to have around us, right? So I want somebody around me that's complete, that is whole, that loves themselves, and that exudes joy. I can't be somebody who doesn't do that, because if I'm somebody who doesn't feel that I'm whole and I need somebody else to complete me, I'm only going to attract somebody else who's a half. Like C's attract C's. You see what I'm saying? So if I'm a C, like I'm looking for another C to complete me. But if I'm a circle, I don't even necessarily need to look. I can just exist. I can just be. And then I'll attract the people who are on that same wavelength, who exist and just are in the moment, right? Like that's the beauty of like really putting this work in on ourselves, because when we put in work in on ourselves, we attract people who put in work in on ourselves, and then our overall peer group just becomes healthier. It's just a beautiful thing. And 3, decision-making ability improves, and therefore so does our effectiveness in our occupations, life roles, etc. And once again, talking about that stop and pause moment, you know, that we began the podcast with, like the ability to make a decision in real time, where, and I know you know somebody who, when faced with adversity, when faced with conflict, like they break down, they just can't handle it. And I used to be that somebody, for real. We build process due to what it is that we're used to doing, right? Like, so establishing a better relationship with your emotions allows for us to not have to hit that panic button, allows for us to in real time make split decisions if need be, to be able to take that breathing moment that allows for us to handle difficult circumstances in the moment without having to run away from it and then make a decision now maybe that we'll regret later, but then come back and apologize. It's just less and less and less of that in my life that I find as I continue to go and work on these things and apply these tools in my life. There's less things I need to apologize for. Like, I could just continue to show up. I just continue to show up, and I'm equipped for whatever it is that life presents to me to be. And that is an insane attribute to acquire or to develop or to cultivate, especially if you're in the realm of entrepreneurship, creativity, or like doing something big, like creating things, managing people, making sure that people, like, you know, everywhere you go, you leave an impact on people. That is huge. But I mean, even in you know, I wouldn't say smaller roles, because really these are the biggest roles, right? But like in motherhood, fatherhood, being able to show up, and when your kid presents something to you, be able to see them for who they are. And then that allows for us to really help our kids unfold without putting all of our emotions and spilling our emotions on them in a way that prevents them from being their fullest selves, prevents them from their creative expression. So at the end of the day, like, effectiveness in occupation, effectiveness in our relationships, and effectiveness in the quality of our lives, you can't beat it. You can't beat it. And all it takes is for us to actively participate in applying these tools to our lives. And that's it for You Feel That with Bryce the Third. Before we get out of here, I got to ask you to rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts. That's how we get through the algorithm and how more people find this podcast. I ask that you share this podcast episode with 5 people that you feel that could use these things that we talked about here today. I ask that you follow me on social media at Bryce the Third, BryceThird. And that's my Cash App too. So, you know, if you $BryceThird, everything here is bootstrap. I put everything together. It's all organic, and I can use as much help as I get to make this thing be as great as possible, because we are the premier podcast for those looking to grow, excel, and succeed in the world as a highly sensitive person. We going to the moon, baby. We going to the moon. And this is world class, and you can help. You can help. Every little bit helps. You can also support me monthly on Patreon, Bryce the Third on Patreon. That's where you can go and get a lot of the behind the scenes things that I come up with when I'm, putting these things together. I do a lot of other creative things as well. So I put a lot of behind the scene things on there. And that's another way to support me and support the show and make sure that we keep tracking. And last but not least, our quote of the day is by Nicholas Sparks. It says that the emotion that can break your heart is sometimes the very one that heals it. You too can learn how to do emotional judo. This is emotional jiu-jitsu class. We gonna get you together. We gonna get you together. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Bryce the Third, and I'll see you next time on You Feel That with Bryce the Third.